I went back to Japan, playing my last season, and I just told them that's it, no more. And then it was funny because when I said no more, and I think when they knew I was seriously coming back home, then they put up the offer of my contract just went off the roof. And and then I knew. I think the Japanese, they knew probably, and I think that's what they do with all the Pacific Islanders. They probably knew that we got nowhere to go, and they just bargain. And they always give us the lowest bargain. And I think that's probably it's different from an All Black, which I think it's good to go there if you're an All Black, because if you go there an All Black, then you're very marketing. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. But if you go there, because majority of the foreigners that go from New Zealand and Tonga, it was, go there like a semi-pro, and then when you make it pro, I don't think you get the best deal, because those guys know that you got nowhere to go.
When was the first time you fell in love with rugby? Were you 5 years old, or what happened?
No, I started rugby pretty late. When I was 16, to be honest.
16?
Yeah.
Did someone recruit you because you had the massive guns or something, and they try to run through you and you're the bully at school?
Or? My old man played for Tonga. It was they call it the Legend team back then. It was 73 to 75. They beat the Wallabies, Scotland. It was quite a gun team in Tonga. So my old man was in that team. But the problem is he married my mum, and my mum always prioritized education. So as I was growing up, it was never, rugby was not a thing for me.
Yeah, were you a book nerd or something? And did you play any other sport, or were you skinny?
Didn't play any sports, yeah. I was just skinny little Tongan boy. Just go to school, come back. But I think Dad's quite a big man. I think if you realize the Fifita family, we're big boys.
Yeah, you grew into it, I could tell.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You went on the rugby field the first time and you got rocked, or how was it? Was it easy?
It wasn't easy at first because I didn't know how to play rugby, but people assume that because of my size, they just look at me, oh man, he must be good at rugby. And then they watch me play and they were like, man, this kid's lost. The ruck's over there and I'm on the other side, and I don't know.
Well, just give people context, how far up did you get in the rugby scene? What was sort of the best team you played for?
Oh, I went over to Japan. In New Zealand.
Wherever, both. Just to give you that street cred, you know?
Yeah, I think in New Zealand, just rugby for counties and Auckland age group. And then, in Japan, I was in the squad for the Japan team, even the Japan Sevens team, but didn't make it. I got injured, or I did do something stupid that I got dropped from the team.
So you were going to play against New Zealand in the Sevens potentially?
Yes, in the Hong Kong Sevens, but I didn't make it that far. But
they're good at recruiting New Zealand talent, eh? Where did that come from? How are they finding you? Or you just saw a video on TV and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go there and make some money?
Nah, in Japan, the first foreigners that kind of make a big scene on rugby, it was Tongans from Tonga. So it started off with 3 players. And then after that, Japan think that Tongans are just so good at rugby. And then they just go straight to Tonga. Even now, they're still doing it. And just recruit them at young age, about high school level, and then take them over. And then, it's quite a good, because it's not like New Zealand, they come for high school here, but that's it. Then they have to, if they play good, then they get taken by a, Super Rugby team or whatever. But in Japan, there's a pathway to professional there, and it's quite clear from high school. straight from high school, there's university line up for you. And then basically after university, that's when professional teams comes and pick you. And yeah.
Was it a shock when you went there? Were you like, God, there's all these robots and there's lots of people and
Oh, yeah, mate, it was a culture shock for me. Because as I said, I only spent about 2-3 years in New Zealand when I came from Tonga. And then I left
fresh.
I left to Japan. And then, didn't know much English here. And then when I went to Japan, I didn't know any Japanese at all. So it didn't help when Japanese couldn't speak English. So
What was the biggest shock when you got there? I remember when I started traveling and I was like, everything's so big and there's so many people and they don't care about you. They won't even look at you when you're walking down the street.
oh mate, just the size of the land, to be honest, is when we landed at Osaka airport, and it was like massive. Like I haven't seen that a big airport like that in my life, and I was just amazed with technology, and the airport was so massive, and the coach that picked us up as we drive out the airport, he said, "You know that airport you guys land on? It was a man-made airport." I was like, "What?" So yeah, so apparently it was a they just
Hand built. Is that what you mean? Like no machines? What do you mean man-made?
like it wasn't, they made an island and then built the airport on it.
Oh, so the island doesn't exist until they put it there.
Yeah, so it was out on the water, and and I was like, oh wow, that's unreal.
And then
But
you go to play some rugby and then they're telling you things in Japanese and you're like, I don't know what you mean. And you just get wrecked. Like what's it like learning how to play rugby there?
oh, the very next day it was training, and I expected it's Japan, it's foreign country. I was thinking like professional level kind of thing. But man, when we went to the rugby field, it was like dirt. It was like no grass. It was like we were playing on dirt, and I was like, oh, what the heck? But yeah, just slowly it's the culture and the rugby, and to be honest, like I wanted to come back home. Um,
Immediately, you're just like, why am I playing on dirt? Yeah.
yeah, and then the food, was all right, but I missed the island food. It was just all rice and just some of the stuff that they eat. I got used to it after, but it didn't sit well with me and just make me homesick even more. But like even worse because I had a son when I was 20. That's why I left. So I kind of miss him.
Oh,
Yeah.
you left for a greater opportunity or because you had one and you were trying to avoid them finding you? Or what do you mean? Trying to disappear off the grid before social media?
Yeah. But yeah, so I wanted to come back home, but what kept me there is I left New Zealand because I wanted to pursue rugby to get better financials for my kid. Um,
How
and
often
my
did you
family.
see him? Like once a year sort of thing?
Yeah, back then it
Savage.
was just once a year.
Was there even Zoom back then? Probably not, eh? Said phone
Nah,
call,
or
landline.
just phone call, and
Yeah, how old was
it
he?
was so expensive. Uh, he's 21 now. But yeah, I left when he was when he was one, really.
Oh, yeah, so he didn't remember. So you're trying to like build this relationship through the phone. He's like, who's this? When you came back, was he surprised? Like, who are you? Like, was it?
Not really. When I came back, I think it's just I don't know. Probably he knows I'm his dad. He was like all over me.
Oh, yeah.
Like as soon as I came out of the airport because he didn't, he doesn't know what I look like. Um, but he just ran towards me, and I was like, oh, maybe his mother probably showed him some photo myself. But yeah, he
Wow, she
just
did well, eh? Because it's
yeah,
just the voice. So she would have had to prep and make sure you don't upset dad. Pretend you like him. I'll give you some candy. You know what I mean?
yeah, probably.
How do you do, like, in terms of like maintaining that relationship, like in terms of, the mother and also your son? Like, you're all gone for years, huh? 2 years,
Yeah,
was it?
yeah. To be honest, like I won't recommend it to anyone, but yeah, um, long distance relationship, it's not the best thing. Especially when you try to pursue a career in rugby. There's a lot of mental factor comes in. Um, you're worried about your kid, and then yeah, some other stuff that goes on behind the scene. But yeah, I always, like I said to my son now, it's like, man, pursue your career. If you want to pursue rugby, go for it now, and then have a family after. That way, your um your primary focus is just to make it in rugby, because raising a family is a different. I'd probably say do it not when you're 20. But yeah, if you raise a family when you're 25, at least you're a little bit mature and um, know what you're dealing with. But yeah, definitely 20, I was too young, and I didn't know what was I doing.
And what about all those rugby boys? You always hear about infidelity, or like they find it hard to maintain relationships. Like the Navy SEALs, I think, have the highest divorce rate out of any
Yeah.
occupation. Like, what's your advice to those rugby players that are traveling around? There's temptation everywhere. They're working hard. They miss their partner. What's your advice to maintain?
Just remember why you go there. Like for me, I didn't want to go to Japan, but I went there because I wanted a good I wanted my son to have a better, you know, financial life than the way I was growing up in Tonga. And that's just always um remind me every time I struggled or whatever I go through, because like you said, there's a lot of temptation around. You're on your own, and boys normally go on the piss after. But yeah, you just have to remind yourself that, and then why you're in Japan, and just to hold you back to your goals and your purpose in life.
What was song like? You said upbringing. Like, like, was your dad a chief and had all the money, and you had a massive mansion, or you're out there trying to catch your own food? Like, what? How bad was it in Tonga? What do you mean?
Ah, is I think growing up in Tonga is, back then I didn't have your dad doesn't really talk to you. Normally he would just come in, when we go to the bush or go to the farm or do some work. That's the only time you hang out with your dad. But it's not really a hangout. It's like get there, do work, and then come back home. But then I look back now, I missed that time. And it was all of the conversation that we had. It was quite, it was valuable to me, but I didn't know it then. But then now I've got a son now. I'm like facing, um, when things get tough in life. I've always remember what he always says. But like I said, it wasn't like a full on conversation every time between dad and I. But I think that's how he wanted to raise me, just for me to do things on my own way. And he didn't really want to spoon feed me most of the time, and like basically let me, I don't know, like learn in the hard way,
Mm.
which I thought was harsh, but because I was like, man, at least dad could have helped me. But anyways, now I look back and I was like, okay, he was like making me a um, stronger man. Because when you go out in life, it's not as simple, it's not as smooth as you
Yeah,
as you
get
think.
wrecked, eh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But what's your take? Like, I know people throw around the word toxic masculinity. I think that's a harsh way to describe it. But, like men that are afraid to share their emotions and they're trying to be hard and not appear weak. And I imagine that's big in the rugby culture. And there's also a lot of Polynesian brothers that, are finding life's too hard and just taking their own life and stuff. What's your take on that, on trying to be strong but also vulnerable?
Yeah, I think for me, I think I was a bit lucky in the sense that I was pretty close to mum. So it was easy to share things with her. And that's kind of eased the load off me. Like I share anything with her. Because I was, like I said, dad was raising me in a tough way that I was a bit scared of him, that I didn't want to share anything with him. But mum was like, and I know mum always had my back. That's why, it was good. I think that's probably what keeps me going, knowing that I had that person to share things with. But I think with the other guys, and I know if you don't have your mum, then I guess it's tough because you can't really share with your dad because we all probably raised the same. It's we call it tough love, but it's not in a harsh way. They just want us to learn in a hard way, and which is good because life is not easy. It's not simple, but just a relationship factor. I think it's always good to if it's not your mum, like your sister or whoever your closest sibling, I think it's always good to share it with someone.
And is there a culture around that? Like anyone that complains in rugby, they're a wuss. They probably use a different word, but they're like, you're a chicken shit. Like harden up, bro. Like how how do you navigate that? Where you're like, hey, you don't want to look weak, but you also know that sometimes life's hard. You want to have a little cry to someone you love.
Yeah, I think in my case, because I said I played rugby when I was 16, so some people thought that I was, a bit of a poofter because I don't play. I don't because I don't play rugby. And they just look at my size, was like, man, you're massive and you're big, but you don't play rugby. But not that they know that my mom she was really heavy on school, and that's for me and all my siblings. And yeah, so that was, and I think my dad's like I said, big. My mom's not that big, but my
Yeah,
dad's
but not say
my
that
dad's
on there.
scared of my mom.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But
That's
but I
always the
guess
same. Like you see these big brothers, these Polynesian brothers like Tonga, Samoa, and they're terrifying, or maybe they're part of a gang, or they're a fighter. And then as soon as mum comes in, they're
yeah, man.
like, "What's that about? Why is everyone? What's mums? Are they terrifying in Tonga or what?"
I don't know, I think you just because you just have that really close relationship with her, and then when she turns up, you already know. Like if she's happy, then man, happy. If she's not happy, cheapest. So yeah, and I think it's a good culture.
Yeah.
Um,
What have you sort of gained from being raised in Tonga? Like what you've learned and wish you could bring here, and then what have you sort of wish there wasn't that sort of culture in Tonga?
oh, just the relationship part. I think between father and son. Um, I think dads, it's okay, but you can. It's okay to show that. You know, I think back then they had to show that they're tough, and I never seen the weak side of my dad. I've just seen him as a big man, scary, strong, tough. But deep down, I know there's always um, a soft side to to everyone. So I think and to be honest with you, then kind of that's what I've learned. When I raised my son, I was basically like my dad. I think with the first 2, 3 years, I was tough on him, and then I realized because of I live in Japan and he lives in New Zealand, I was doing that, but I was never around. So I feel like I'm pushing myself away from him even more because I'm never around, and every time I'm around, I'm tough on him. So, and then for me, I realized what I never seen on my dad, and I knew I'm a dad now. So I've shared that, oh, okay, I'm struggling here, son. And, I'm just sharing that with him instead of showing my weaknesses, which I think is something that all most dads should embrace, because we can all be strong, we can act all strong and around our kids, but we got to show that side, because it is real. Because when they become a dad, I'm a dad then, so I realized, man, I'm sure my dad was feeling this, but he just didn't show it. So I think that's that part, because I did that, and it made me closer to my son, which is kind of different from most of us growing up. We were close to mum most of the time. But yeah, so back to your question, what I learned, it was good, but you can also change that now by just showing that, well, basically showing that you're human, really. Because, like I said, when I became a dad, I was like, man, I'm a dad and I'm going through this. I'm struggling and I'm weak, and well, how come I didn't see that in my dad? But I guess, like I said, he was showing tough love, and he was showing that you can do anything. You just be strong.
So you sort of think, like, so when your son goes through that, he doesn't sort of bowl it up in the same way, and he can validate, like he feels validated that his strong father they looked up to as a kid feels these things too, so it's okay. Is that sort of?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's, I've always reflect of myself. And if my son did something or he's weak on something, I've always said, look, I was like that too. Like, instead of telling him, look, you got to work hard, you got to do this, you got to, just be, instead of being tough on him and just like work the shit out of him, I showed him that, yeah, I was like that too. If that relates to me, I'll tell him. It's like, look, I was in your shoes before. I know what's it feel like. I failed. I even said it to my kids. I was like, look, I failed too. So it's normal. But what we can learn is, you fail, but you just have to work hard, because it's not the end of the road. And they always say there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to keep working hard. But yeah, so I think that's how I raised my kids. Is I learned from how I grew up, and but I knew it wasn't my dad's fault. It was everyone, like all my age group. He said the same thing about their dads, because we always joke about it, how we always scared of dad, and dad never do this or show this or share this. But yeah, it's like, I think that's that generation at that time. But
Yeah, because I couldn't piece the puzzle of why so many Polynesian young men are killing themselves. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I know it's a heavy topic, but there's not really, I don't come across too many vulnerable figures that are also signals of strength, So you're this rugby player and you're out there making things happen, but you're also acknowledging that, hey, sometimes things are hard. Do you know, I know it's a heavy topic, but what's your take on why so many young men from Tonga or Samoa or seem to be checking out?
I think for me is, they didn't find the balance between, because we growing up, we all strong with our faith. They don't balance and understand the real meaning of your faith. And for them, I feel like we were just going to church because otherwise we'll get hiding if we stay at home. But if they really, dig a little bit more into their faith, they will learn what, because we all believe in Jesus and he died on the cross because of us, and all of that stuff. So it kind of, it eased the pain when you're praying, because you're letting God knows that you're struggling. Because it's kind of the same thing as, remember when I told you about sharing with someone that you close with, like with me, I had my mum. But in most Tongans or most Pacifica people, they probably have none. And because they weren't really strong with their faith, where they can easily just share it. Because normally what we believe in, you just share it with God and share it, you know, and then everything will be gone, or like, things will be easy. But if you don't have your family and you're not doing church properly, then I guess you'll be on your own. You'll be in a dark space because there's no one to share with. You're not strong at church. Someone to help you out, give you a bit of spiritual help. But and I think that's probably why. And the other thing that I've always realized, and I've said it a few times. I'm not sure if I'm right on this, but Pacifica people, there's only two things that they want in life growing up, is either church. There's two things. There's church and sports. And that's why I see a lot of Pacifica people playing sports, and there's a lot of them going to church. And education is a thing, but it's not really encouraged in the Pacific. And that's why I felt for rugby guys, because it's been like that as they're growing up. It's either church or sports, and then they go hard, and then most of them make it in sports. But most of them thought they're going to be like that for the rest of their life. Like, sports is the thing until they realize they're getting older and the team doesn't want them anymore and they can't play sports anymore. That kind of ruined their plan. But I think for me is, I'm very fortunate that my mum was pushing school, because when I finished rugby, I knew I was good at school. I was good at something in school, and I just pursued that and got my degree, and then got a job and just move on with life. Where most players come back, no education. First option for them to do is to buy a business that their friend recommend or someone recommend to them to do, because it's a good business at the time. But they're going in there not knowing what they're doing, and they give them about a year or two, which I think they mainly finance the business because they got a bit of a cash from rugby. But once their cash flows dry up, then
they're cooked.
They're cooked.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of see rugby players like salesmen in a way. Like, salesmen, the best salesmen are impulsive buyers, so they believe you should buy now, so they never have money because they spend so quickly.
Yeah.
So, like, you imagine a rugby player gets all this money, not used to it, probably humble beginnings, had to hustle to get there. Oh, I've got all this money, it'll all work out. And then all of a sudden it's all gone. All the family has their handouts, so you want to give back to them because they helped you up. What leads to a rugby player's downfall? What's the stereotype of what happens in rugby with their finances?
I think because everyone grew up in a poor family, we never seen that much money before in our lives. And when we do, no one's giving them proper education around, you're going to get, we're going, grow up, imagine growing up in Tonga, mum and dad get paid, I don't know, $100 a week or something. And then all of a sudden you make it in sports and you get $10K a week.
Yeah, what do they get? Like, just curious, what does a rugby player get in the different tiers? Do you know? Like, is it millions? Is it 100 grand a year average?
Yeah, I think now the average for probably if you make it international level, especially All Blacks or Wallabies, or I don't know, definitely All Blacks. I think if you go overseas, you should get at least $500,000 a year.
Jeez, eh?
Yeah, and that will be your
People will randomly walk behind me, by the way. So you get $500,000 and then you get all these sponsorship deals, or you banned from doing sponsorship deals because you got the All Blacks name? Like,
yeah.
I'd milk the hell out of it. Hey, drink this drink, Oh, well, I probably wouldn't, but that's how you'd make a lot of money.
Yeah, I think when we go overseas, because most of the teams owned by a big company like Toyota, Toshiba. So, but because you were just wearing the kit or going out, because we go out to like public and I don't know, give out something, or go into school. That's basically this what they want. And to be honest, rugby is not a big sports in Japan. It's like, yeah, it's a very small compared to baseball, soccer. Those guys, yeah. And the reason why I know it's small, because if you're here walking around, like let's say Richmond walking around here, everyone will realize who he is. But in Japan, there's few towns he's walking around, no one even cares or even know who he is. And some of them, like you're like, oh, he's an All Black, and some of them are like, oh, what's that? But then if like an average baseball player walk past, they're all
Love
over
it.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So you get $500,000. I imagine you're probably not allowed to advertise anything until you leave the All Blacks. They keep trying to flog Powerade. I'm like, dude, read the ingredients. Like that's just you're just killing people over the long term. But anyway, so they get $500,000,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden they're like giving all their money to their family because they feel guilty about their success and they're used to $100 a week or whatever. Do they get like ripped off a lot? Do people scan them and stuff? Like, what's the life like as a rugby player?
Yeah, I think the people who probably scare me the most is your friends. Yeah, that's harsh. And I know for a fact when those when those boys go broke, those friends are not around. So it is, it comes to mind that it's like that everywhere else. Is you got to choose your friends close, wisely, and you know. But yeah, for Tongans, yeah, families. I wouldn't say, if you give mum and dad money, I don't know, that's your choice, because you feel like mum and dad raised me, and then yeah, got to give it to them. But when you do it with your friends or give money to your friends, I think that's a bit on the borderline, like that they have to be careful for, because like I said, I've seen a few friends comes in, and yeah, then when those guys go broke, they're not around, which
Are
is
a lot
sad.
going broke? Are like 10% going broke? Are all of them going broke? And then now they're just trying to sell Powerade themselves? Like, well, because you've got a brand. You've arguably got one of the better brands in the world in terms of professional performance and win rate. You
Yeah.
can milk the hell out of that, but they probably don't get good advice, and people would like be parasitic, and especially if they're financially struggling. So, do you know how many, like, not percentage wise, but is it quite common that they go broke, and there's only a few fellas that actually are ballers?
Yeah, I think it's common, um, compared to other. Yeah, I think it's common, and maybe I could be wrong. Someone can say I'm wrong, but I think from what I know and from the friends that I know and most people that I know, yeah, I think majority of them go broke, and then there's all come down to education, really. Um, and I'm always interested in rugby players that succeed in life, and the you know, common theme that I get from most of them is, they learn something, and they not just listening to someone and then go by what they listen to. They actually learned about it themselves and actually get in there, and like, it's like rugby. They actually train for it. And then, but even better for those people, they just, because they're trained for it and they're passion for it, they get more successful people around them that they're good in that area. And I think that's probably the key difference.
Yeah, I think you need to be able to slither like a snake to recognize one. You know what I mean? Like, I think you need to understand the
Yeah.
actual, like, the biggest thing I see with business partners where someone scams the other one is just a lack of oversight on what they're actually doing and a lack of understanding and
Mm.
instilling too much trust in someone. So, okay, what about career transition? So you do rugby, it's going to be your whole life, and then suddenly you get a sore shoulder or you hit your head too many times, and now you're like, I've got no purpose and no hope in life. How did you deal with, like, I'm not a rugby player anymore. What should I do?
Um, I said this to people. I think when my son lives in New Zealand, and then when he came to Japan, he didn't like this because he came when he was 7, so 6 years of schooling in New Zealand. He's already making friends. He's already understand what the New Zealand education is all about. Because when he came to Japan, he didn't like the Japanese school. And, I know he was struggling because of the language, but because in Japan, it's quite old tradition. If you're year 1 or year 2, you don't learn much in the classroom. It's all about discipline in Japan. Like wash your hands, get up, tidy up, brush your teeth. Like it's all like
Formative, yeah.
one, yeah. And I
Oh,
think he didn't, and because he came, like I said, he came when he was 7 years old. He was struggling because he wasn't raised like that here. But and then he decided that, we decided that the schools in Japan is not for him. So he came back and lived with the grandparents, which I'm fortunate for and grateful that they took him. But because he came back, I was planning to come home for him. Because I was planning on, and then it comes back to education for me. Like I tried to nail it down to like what I was good at school, like what subject. I know there was two that I like was maths and accounting.
you like the counting, yeah? You're sick in the head. Yeah, Gareth, so let's, yeah,
Someone's got to do it, mate.
yeah, for sure. I'm glad you exist, man. I love paying people money to do things I don't want to do, for sure. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then I didn't know much jobs around maths apart from being a teacher, and I didn't want to be a teacher. And then I thought, okay, what about accounting? And I was like, oh, an accountant. I don't know what accountants do, but I know you know, the things that I like was preparing the financial statements and that sort of stuff. And it when I learned a little bit more about it, then I realized, okay, I can maybe if I do like that part of the accounting, I can be a tax accountant. And then basically when I came back to New Zealand, because I left halfway through my degree, I came back and finished off my degree while working. And I was fortunate to have a job in one of the small accounting firm in Panau. And I didn't know at the time when I got the job offer, because I got the job offer and I wasn't retiring yet, but I was waiting for someone to give me a job here in New Zealand so I can come back home. Um, and then I knew I'll probably have like 3-4 years of playing in Japan. But when I came back here, it was quite a story that I still can't figure out why it happened. And I've always think it was a miracle. It was a God's miracle for me because I got injured in Japan and I got told that my career is finished because I dislocated my hip. Yeah, and I saw a specialist in Japan, and they told the head coach, like, nah, he's done. Um, it's like it was hard to take then because I wasn't planning to come home that soon, that early. And the coach was like, okay, why don't you go to New Zealand and see a specialist in New Zealand and see what they say. If they say it's you're done, then we'll take that. That means you'll finish. And mate, when I came to New Zealand, so they booked me to see what the name of the doctor is, one of the All Blacks doctors, because they want the best option, like the best result, so they can make a call on my career. And I went to see him, did the scan and everything with him because he didn't. He said, "Oh, I took the scan that I had in Japan," but he said, "Oh, I'll just take another one here." And he took it, and yeah, and then I got told, and he said, "Your hip is not dislocated." So it was the opposite of what Japan told me. I was like, it was so confused because I was so down when I came over on the plane because I was like, man, I'm done. My career is short, it's cut,
yeah.
it's cut short. And then I see this guy, and he said, well, there's something wrong with your hip, but it's not dislocated. It's not bad. You can still play. And he was like mentioning some of the All Blacks back in that time. There's like, those guys they got that, and so they're still playing. So it's like it's normal. So, anyways, my team in Japan was happy, but then my best mate here had a kid that he wanted me to be the godfather, and then I went. I was happy. I was like, man, I'm not injured. I can still play rugby. Then I went into this christening of my goddaughter, and then at the party there was a guy there that owned a accounting practice. Then he came up to me. He knew I was playing rugby, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing? And what are you doing here? And aren't your season still going?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm here because I'm injured, but I got told I'm not injured anymore." And then he asked me. And then he asked me the question, and he said, "What are you doing after rugby?" And then I didn't know the guy. We just have a normal conversation. And I was like, "Oh, to be honest, if someone give me a accountant job, I'll quit." I think I had like, I don't know, probably 6 beers by then. I said to him, if someone give me an accountant job, I'll quit my career. I'll go back to Japan, play my last season, and pack up and come home. And then he put up his hand. He's like, let's shake on it. And I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, he's probably making a bet with me. And I didn't know he had to practice himself. Then he said to me, well, I've got an offer for you then. And then I was like, anyways, I didn't take it seriously. And then I was like enjoying the party, and then came home. And then the next morning, like, I woke up, saw a head, and I said to my wife, and I was like, oh, do you know that man that I was talking to? And I mentioned his name. And then she said, oh, yeah, well, I know him. And then I was like, oh, he offered me a job as an accountant, but I think he was drunk. And then my wife said, the guy doesn't drink. And then I was like, oh, because he told me to call him the next day. And then I ring him up. And then he was like, oh, yeah, like I told you yesterday, you got a job. Swing by the office. And as soon as I walk into the office in Parnell, it's in the Access building, above Chibo. Do you know the restaurant, Chibo?
No. But yeah, I know. Keep going.
Anyways, I walked in there in the office, and he was introducing me to everyone, the receptionist, everyone in the office. There was like, and he's like, "Oh, welcome to our new staff." And I was like, "What?" And then he walked me right back to the back of the office, and he said, "Look at that corner there," and he said, it's empty, so that's your office." And I was like, "Man, this is legit. It is real. I've got a job." So I went back to Japan, playing my last season, and I just told him, that's it, no more. And then it was funny because when I said no more, and I think when they knew I was seriously coming back home, then they put up the offer of my contract just went off the roof. And then I knew, I think the Japanese, they knew probably, and I think that's what they do with all the Pacific Islanders. They probably knew that we got nowhere to go. And they just bargain. They always give us the lowest bargain. And I think that's probably, it's different from an All Black, which I think it's good to go there if you're an All Black, because if you go in there an All Black, then you're very marketing. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. But if you go there, like, because majority of the foreigners that go from New Zealand and Tonga, it was, go there like a semi-pro, and then when you make it pro, I don't think you get the best deal because those guys know that you got nowhere to go.
Just to
And
give an
that's what,
idea of money, though, like what was the difference? Was it like 10 times more, 5 times, 2 times?
oh mate, it was, my one was like, yeah, it was 7 times, yeah, close to 10 times more.
You're like Stitch Up. That probably inspires you to be like, what's the catch here? Now all of a sudden I'm valuable. I've been doing the same stuff. Now I've
Yeah,
got a
that's,
bung hip. What do you mean?
I know, it's even worse. I've got a bunk hip and they're giving me my best contract. And, and I knew, and I was like, oh, these guys, they're messing up with me. And, it made me even more angry because I was like, man, I've spent all this time here and never got this offer. And when you know that I'm going home and you decided to give me the offer, then,
Did you say double it and I'll think about it? Like, just
oh,
play the game, see how far it
oh,
goes.
mate, because I've already got a job here, right? And I
Yeah.
came back and I was working in Parnell, but the team was still, because the season started in September and now we finished in February. And then, yeah, so February up to September, the head coach was still communicating, like he was still calling me as up and said, hey, why don't you just come back? But because I already had a job, I was just playing with them. And I was like, oh, yeah, sweet, I'll come then. I'll come. And then, and then I, and then, and then they knew I wasn't coming. And then the guy called me, I think the season started in September, and he called me in July. And he's like, hey, mate, I think we need you, and your contract's still here. Because they paid it to a Japanese bank account.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh, sorry, no, I didn't sign the contract. And if I was going to sign the contract, they'll pay it to a Japanese bank account. And then I said to them, this is in July because the season started in September. And I knew they wanted me to come back. And then I was just playing with them. And I said, okay, if I do come, when do you want me to come? And the guy said, oh, basically to September, because we got the 4 games in September. It's all against the weakest team. So if we win all the 4 teams, then it avoid us from being in the relegation match. And I was like, okay. And then I said to them, because I'm coming for a month, if I sign the contract, I'm not going to just get paid for 1 month. I want the whole contract. And man, to my surprise, the guy said, yeah, I was offering you your whole, so basically the whole contract in 1 month. Ah, mate, I went back and I talked to my employer, and then he said, oh, hey, the team's still contacting me. And he's like, even now? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, man, the contract must be good. I was like, it is good. And then, and then he said to me, do you mind if I know or see it? And then I said, yeah, I got nothing to lose. I showed him my contract, and man, he nearly fell off his office chair. And he's like, they're going to pay you this for 1 month. And I was like, yep, that's the deal. Is it come play for 4 games, and I get all the whole contract. And he was a pretty cool guy. He said to me, just go, mate. If I was you, I'll go. Because it's 1 month, your job will be here. Just take a leave or whatever, and then just come back. And then I decided, I had a good talk with the family, but then I decided then that's when I was weighing up my career. And then I was like, man, I played all my life to get this kind of money. And they just offer me at the end. And I've got a guy that out of nowhere offered me a job opportunity that can set me up for life. And I decided then that I will stay with my job just to honor the guy. I know it's only 1 month, but I say, look, I'll stay because if you didn't give me a job, to be honest, I wouldn't know what I'll be doing now. And then the guy was like, oh, yeah. And then every time he meet a client and if they come and meet me for the first time, and he always introduced to them as ex-professional rugby player in Japan. And he's like, I don't know why he sacrificed so many zeros in his pay slip just to come and work for me. And he said, I've seen his contract. But I think you see the sacrifices I made there because I wanted to learn about being an accountant. That 3 years, 4 years that I spent in his practice, I kind of learned everything that what accountant need to know to a scale that, because it's a small firm, we weren't dealing with anything more than 2 million because otherwise it'd be too much for us, or too much because he's only got, I think it was seven staff at the time. So anyways, I finally learned the practice, learned everything that I need to know. And then, and on top of that, he is the one that, go back to when he offered me the job. After 3 months, I didn't know that the contract that he gave me was like a trial period. So basically, if I didn't do well in the 3 months, but here I am thinking it was like a job for life.
Yeah.
But it was like it was like a 3 months trial. And then he told me at the end of the 3 months, it's like, and they gave him a proper job contract. And he said, look, I can see you can be an accountant. You pick up the job well. And then, you know what you're doing and you're asking the right questions. And he said, look, I think you should pursue your degree, finish your degree, because that will help you in long term. And long story short, I finished my degree and I've got like 4 to 5 years experience with them. And man, when I apply for jobs, I was amazed with a lot of big accounting firms like giving me offers. Because why? I wasn't just an ordinary uni student. They see that I'm a mature student, but not just that. I did something that not everyone was doing. No one played rugby and then come back and be an accountant. So they,
Yeah, you're the most shredded accountant I've ever met, mate. But before you go on the PW, well, like the big four that you got part of, I'll just be curious, just on the contract part. Like, if let's say you were the advisor to these young rugby players going over there, and they're about to negotiate their contract, like, where are people getting stitched up, and like, what should you think about in the negotiation table?
I think sometimes we think we know what we're doing. That was part of my mistake in my first few years. I heard of the agent, but then I heard people saying, "Oh, the agent just take 10%," and then they don't. Then I realized it's good to have an agent, like a good one, because those people know what they're doing. Because if you go in there into the negotiation room without an agent, they're gonna, you can't basically you can't change anything because they know they got the power over you, and that kind of, and it was even worse. Japan, they know the Tongans very well, even the Pacifica culture very well, because they respect their elders. So when you're negotiating with, and they always put an older man in there.
Oh, right, actually, yeah.
So
religious man as well, like bring the priest or something.
Oh, mate.
You're gonna say no in front of God, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but yeah, it's like I think they knew how to treat the Pacific Islanders then. But then for me, I was like, man, it doesn't matter if the agent take their percentage, but because they take it, but then your salary will go up. So it's better that they take part of it and your salary goes up than not taking anything and your salary still stays the same. Do you know what I mean?
How do you find a good agent? Like, what would you look for?
Oh, it's hard because when, like we all rugby players, and you talk to other rugby players and they always share and a lot of players move around agent, and someone will say, oh, that person's, not he's not the right one. He's like, yeah, he stitched me up on something, and then so you hear all the stories, and that's why it was hard to pick a good one, because basically all players were talking about. I think there were probably 2, 3 big agency in New Zealand, and basically they're all talking about how good and bad they are. So it was just hard to take if they're good or not. But then for me, I buy into that, and then I didn't want to deal with any agent. But realistically, when I found out, I was like, man, you can't really deal with these guys by yourself, because they would just overrule you. They would just, but then, yeah, then I got an agent involved, and I just picked random, like not random, but some of my friends' agent that they were with. And then, yeah, so I don't know. I think the way I look, because I saw Adi Salvia, um, he he didn't do any, he's negotiating on his own, right? He's doing everything on his own. I thought that that's a smart move, but I think he knew he's in that level that he knows what he wants and what he's doing. I don't think in the start of his career he will be doing that.
Yeah, fair. What are good terms? Like, do they pay you for the whole year, or they pay you per game? Like, what's some good things to rig up, knowing that you might get injured and you might only have this income for 5 years and then you're cooked?
Yeah, I think yeah, when you're negotiating your contract, you can't, once you're injured or whatever, they can't really do anything with it. So, and it's, they already make it clear if you're injured, then I don't know, whatever they pay you out. But just try to get the best deal out of little things, like when I have an agent, and then the agent never shared the other guy's contract. But then I got to know a guy that openly shared his contract because he wanted to help me out. And then I read his contract. We got the same agent. And then I read the contract, and he was like, this guy, if he scores in one of the most important games or whatever, like, he basically get extras for all this extra stuff that I didn't know about. So, but if my mate didn't share his contract, the agent would share it with me. But this guy was like, he actually scored tries. But then I was thinking of myself, so if you're good at some part of the rugby, you can actually negotiate on that. Like if you're good at turnovers or like whatever, just say if I win 10 turnovers in a game or whatever, then I get 10K on top or whatever. But it's negotiable. So I think for me is if you have a specific skills that no one have, you can actually add that into your contract. But I
Interesting.
didn't. But I didn't know that. You see.
Would you do a yearly thing, a project thing? So you include the bonuses and you make it performance based, because they're probably performance based is where you can make the most money if you're good,
Yes. Yeah.
because they're not going to say no because there's an incentive attached to it. Like they know that if you achieve it, so then why wouldn't they pay you?
Yeah.
What else do you think about? Like, do you get a year up front? Do you uh, ask for a hotel? Or like, what other things? Like, how do you actually structure the deal? Like, do they pay you yearly? Do they pay you per game?
No, in Japan they pay you monthly.
So they're always just trying to have you under the thumb, eh?
Yeah,
They got a
yeah, yeah,
whole setup, eh? Okay, so they pay you monthly in advance, do they?
yeah, yeah. They pay you 1 month in advance, and yeah, it was more of a salary, really. Like you're working for the company, and I think that's how they treat it back then. It's not like a professional contract. You're not like a sports person. You're just your salary. They call it the salary person.
Yeah, so you go to Tonga, you got these people that don't understand the culture, how it works, and they're like just amazed that they can go to Japan, and then you
Mm.
bring in all the elders, so then and then you just put pressure on them, and you get cheap labor. Huh? Does that kind of that are really
Yeah,
talented? Yeah.
yeah. And I think and that's what I've always encouraged like players here, like make a name. And when they say make a name, like make, make sure you're really good at Super Rugby if you can't make it to the All Blacks. But make a name so when you go over there, that you got that your name is powerful already. So they know when you don't like it, you can move to another team. That's why people like Sonny Bill and, those guys, they just say, okay, we're going to come down for like 800K a 3 months. And they're like, okay, because they know if they say no, Sonny Bill will go somewhere else.
Makes
But
sense.
if you end up like myself, where you're not a big name, then the Japanese love that. They know the culture, they know the system, and then even worse, because you go in there, you learn their culture, right? And their culture is similar to Tonga. You respect the elders. So you can't talk back to boys that are older than you. And it's quite a funny culture, but like I said, it's because they treat you like one of them, they expect you to act like one of them.
As
But
interesting.
but if you go in there as a ex All Black, they can't treat you like that because they're like, oh, you're in a different league.
Makes sense. It's like leverage. It's like brand, because essentially they make their money from selling your personality. They want to win games, so you win games, which is good, but they don't really make their money from that. They make their money from you being the face of something that they get sponsored, you know? So you got Sunny Bill, you can put some fucking jeans on them and sell them, and then they'll pay the employers like 500,000, and then they'll give Sunny Bill 10 if it wasn't Sunny Bill, like if you didn't have his brand. So I guess from what you're saying, it's like equip yourself with knowledge so you don't get taken advantage, partner with
Mm.
people that know what they're doing,
Yeah,
and make sure you build a brand so that you actually have leverage on the negotiation table.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for talking about rugby, mate. It's good to have you on. We're done, so.